I do understand that we have Buddy, who was drafted in Major League Baseball in 1978 and debuted with the fine Kansas City Royals team. So I loved watching way back when in 1982. And Buddy, it's Tony DeAngelo on Connecticut Morning. We're so pleased to have you with us today.
Oh, nice to be here, Tony. How are you?
Doing fine, thank you. And you know, I thought about, and thank you for those wonderful materials that you sent. And I was watching them last night. And I don't know, I was giving our viewers a little bit of background about you. Obviously, you know, it's plain even to the trees in the forest that in order to be in Major League Baseball, you have really got to be among the outstanding participants, if you will, of whatever town or sandlot or league or school or whatever the case may be. You know, you have to be of way above average or exceptional ability, and obviously that carried you, you know, into the major leagues over time. But when and we're going to get to, you know, what brought you to where you are. But in your study of athletes today, did you ever go back to what made you such an outstanding athlete early on, and perhaps things you were doing, you know, as a boy, as a teenager, before you were drafted, that maybe you misplaced along the way, and think, yeah, that's what my brain was thinking, and that's what my muscles were thinking, and that's kind of what I lost when I was out of baseball, and you know, now maybe you were doing it back then, even not even knowing it. I'm just curious about that.
Well, yeah, you know, there's been a great mystery in sports, Tony, for a long time. And that mystery is, you know, what's really taking place when someone is really playing lights out. And what happens as soon as the next day or the next inning or the back nine on the golf course, deeper into the tennis match, when someone is not. And so we've been able to quantify that process and teach it. But getting back to, you know, when I was playing as a youngster, my natural ability was just flowing. You know, I was doing it for fun, and I just loved doing it, and you know, my full ability was just rising to the surface on a regular basis. It's what allowed me to be drafted by the Royals in 1978, and it's what allowed me to you know, get to the major leagues, was that natural ability. But quite often that natural ability is not enough. And so there are processes in the mind that must take place for an athlete to play their best. So, you know, it's certainly nice when, as an athlete, we're on cruise control and everything's not happening, where we're not thinking, and everything just slows down, and our motion is just very fluid and effortless, and the ball comes out of our hand like butter on a hot knife. Or a golfer, you know, you're just striking the ball so purely. Or a soccer player who I was working with yesterday said, boy, you know, the ball just comes off the foot so cleanly, and that's all a byproduct of how the muscles are firing, you know, in the body, which are the operating system to motion. And the motion itself is not the operating system. The operating system is the brain.
And it's really something. And I was watching the tape that you so kindly sent along, where you were working with the high school baseball team in Arizona, and these you know, students and their parents. I mean, I wasn't only hearing, I see the ball better, I hit the ball better, but one young man said, I study better, I sleep better. His mother's like, well, he's a better kid. And I'm thinking, man, oh man, oh man. I mean, what kind of benefits do we have here? This is amazing.
Well, yeah, I agree. It's amazing. And we had no idea that the program that Stephen Yellen, the co-founder of our company, and myself developed, would have the impact in all areas of life that it's having. We, you know, our intentions were to just teach an athlete how to perform better, how to get their brain to work more efficiently and more effectively, so their full ability would rise to the surface. However, what we have found, and I can't say it's much to our surprise, but it's certainly much to our pleasure, and it is that when the brain physiology is adjusting on the athletic field, it's naturally carrying over into other areas of life. An efficient brain in one area will intuitively be seeking that same level of efficiency, that same level of experience and feeling in other areas of life, and that's why it's pretty much across the board that our student athletes are doing better in school, they're doing better in testing. You know, you mentioned the boy who said his sleep was much better. It's very, very common. that our clients sleep better. And it's because, again, the brain physiology is starting to work as it's designed to work. We're aligning with these laws of nature, these laws of motion that we've uncovered. And it's really, it's so gratifying to be able to teach this. Anytime you're in a position in life to affect to affect someone's life and to affect how they feel and enhance their life, it's so gratifying. So I'm just extremely blessed to be able to do what it is I do.
Well, and it's fascinating to me because I would read Ted Williams' book, The Science of Hitting. Actually, it was one of those things that was waitlisted at the library where I grew up in Stamford, Connecticut. But when you got it, you kind of shook your head and you said, "What did I wait for this for?" It was, as great a hitter and sportsman as Ted Williams was. I'm thinking to myself, this isn't written for mere mortals. He's got the strike zone quantified into zones and percentages, and what types of balls to hit and where to take the ball and what corner. I'm thinking, all I want to do is make better contact, and if I am able to do that, I'm happier. And I guess Yogi Berra also used to have this thing of, I don't come up here to think, I come up here to hit. And Yogi, of course, was a notorious bad ball hitter. I said all that to say this, buddy. One looking at this, or one, an athlete thinking, well, it's, to me, there's so many things in my brain when I'm trying to perform on a field, on a diamond, on a court, on a course. Now you're going to give me, Mr. Biancalana, all this mind stuff. I mean, how could I possibly grasp it all? And I guess that's a fair question. Is there a lot of mental training, or is this something that after a while when you're teaching it, people can, even of, shall we say, limited, I don't want to say limited attention span, but that people can grasp relatively easily to improve their performance?
Well, that's a great question. If you speak to 100 athletes, Tony, and you ask them, tell me how you felt when you played to their best, typically they'll answer in three things. One, they'll talk about everything slowed down, and I really wasn't thinking it. My emotion was more fluid and effortless. And everything was simple. It was very, very simple, they may say. It was easy. It was effortless. And certainly you wouldn't want to try and replicate something that is very simple with something that is very, very complex. So the whole key is to create and replicate the simplicity that the athlete is experiencing when they're in the zone, when they're playing their best. So when we teach, you say, well, geez, if I put all this into my mind, no. It's about allowing what we call the fluid motion factor to be activated. And the fluid motion factor, when it's activated, what that is, it means that the information that you're processing all around you about the motion, the swing, the competition, whatever, all of that information is moving to a part of the brain called the motor system, uninterrupted by the prefrontal cortex. And the cerebellum, as part of the motor system, is able to calculate where your body is right now and where it needs to be each subsequent moment. So that when the cerebellum is getting this information uninterrupted by the prefrontal cortex, that's when the athlete's full ability rises right to the surface. That's when they're locked in, and that's when they're playing their best. So that's the fluid motion factor. And then we also teach the athlete how to access a quieter state of mind while they are activating the fluid motion factor. And they're able to generate their intention from that quiet state of mind where there's less resistance. It can be compared to, I'm sure you've had the experience, and many of your listeners have had the experience, most have when I ask this question or make this statement, that at night you're starting to settle down to go to bed. You're doing your little routine, and all of a sudden, boom, you have some idea or some thought or some solution comes to you. And why does it happen then versus at 2 o'clock at your desk when you can really use it? Well, the answer to that is, as you start to settle down to bed, and it gets a little later in the evening, the mind starts to settle down, and you start to access these quieter states of the mind, and without even looking for the answer or the solution or the idea, boom, it just pops into your mind. Well, the same thing is true with motion. When an athlete starts to access these quieter states of mind and activates the fluid motion factor simultaneously, the best motion starts to rise right to the surface, and that's when they play their best. So it's a very, very simple process as opposed to a complex process.
Now, in watching you through your career and that, what I thought was a marvelous 1985 World Series, the Missouri-Kansas series and baseball from the heartland, and just, you had that wonderful experience. And you actually went back, and then you left baseball several years after that, and you actually went back to this, as you say, this zone, and you were able to bring this concept forward to lead you on this endeavor, which you were not on, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, absolutely. I was in the zone of the World Series, but I was far from the zone the rest of my career.
Mm-hmm.
And although I almost won the MVP of the '85 World Series, and then 18 months later I was out of the major leagues because I had no idea what was taking place.
What you did.
So, but from that experience, I knew that it had to be repeatable. And many years, so my life's journey has been to figure out, okay, what was taking place and how do you teach it? My partner Stephen Yellen had the same, the same path in life, the same journey. He was a tennis champion, and we have again quantified with a neuroscientist what was taking place for me in the World Series and for Stephen in a championship match at the University of Pennsylvania when he had his zone experience. And more importantly than quantifying it, we're able to teach it systematically to athletes. And any sport, and the sport doesn't matter, we've even trained musicians as well.
And actually, that leads me to two questions. I was watching and thoroughly enjoying your interview with MLB and Jim Cott, whom I've loved for years. I watched him pitch in the '65 series, and going pitch for pitch with Sandy Koufax, and never had the pleasure of meeting him. But just he just has that. I mean one of the you as well, but in many major leaguers, guys that look like ball players, and just they're heartwarming. And my question to you is your science that you're studying, you and Stephen, is this starting to get some acceptance now at the big league level?
It's the big league clubs are warming up. Several big league clubs are warming up. Other big league clubs, for whatever reason, and this is life in general. Anytime you have something that's new and paradigm shifting,
Mm-hmm.
many people do not want to pay attention. Most people want to stay in their comfort zone, and we understand that. And but yeah, several major league clubs are getting very interested. I've been on them for years with what we've discovered, and we know that the issue with the injuries, we have the primary reason for all the pitching injuries. We know we have the solution. And, so they're starting to listen. In fact, I did a call with a major league club yesterday who is probably the most interested club in our program at this stage. And so we just keep moving along. We're having a lot of success in many, many sports. We work with not just professional athletes, but many amateur athletes, all the way up, from anywhere from, 11, 12 years old all the way through the professional level. So, again, it's very gratifying, and people are, starting to find us. We probably could do a better job of marketing ourselves. However, our specialty is what we teach, and so there are areas we need to shore up in our business to get the word out more. So.
Well, and I'm very thankful you mentioned injuries because, Mark, my producer, is a devout Yankee fan. He comes from the lineage of Yankee fans. And, of course, the Yankee pitching staff, which is, we used to talk about the June swoon. It seems to be happening in May with these pitching injuries. And you mentioned that in using your program, that injuries can be minimized. Is that because you develop a greater economy between the mind and the body, where players aren't stressing as much when they're throwing a ball or swinging, or is it something more than that?
Well, fluid motion of the body is a byproduct of information getting to the cerebellum uninterrupted by the prefrontal cortex. And anytime you have fluid motion in the body, you're going to have a reduction of injuries because the tug-of-war between the bigger, bulkier muscles and the more fast-twitch, subtle muscles is eliminated. the way that, in this day and age, guys are stronger than ever, and the baseball industry knows more about perfect mechanics than ever before. However, that combination is becoming more deadly every day because they really don't understand how the brain affects the muscles of the body. And that's where they're missing it. And that's the reason for all the injuries, in my opinion, and doctors and trainers agree with me. So there's a tug of war that's taking place, in the pitcher's body that's never been greater than ever before because of the strength that athletes now have, along with the understanding of perfect mechanics. So they're working on these perfect mechanics, which I'm a huge fan of. I love perfect mechanics. They're very, very important to help reduce injury. But when the prefrontal cortex is so engaged in the learning process, not just the learning process, but also the process of delivering the pitch in games, this tug of war is putting tremendous strain on the muscles, ligaments, and tendons, causing the injuries.
And I think of you in your career, and I think of those fine Royals pitchers who always gave you a day's work for a day's pay, and you think of today's pitchers where it's a 3-pitcher universe and the pitch counts are tightly monitored, and we seem to have more injuries and issues with pitchers than we do ever. And I just can't help thinking that perhaps in all of this micromanaging, you mentioned the strains on the body. I often think about, the fact of a pitcher thinking, well, I've only got 65 or 70 pitches before I get out of here, or 80 or 90, I better make these good. Does that cause you to constrict? Is baseball in that regard, specifically with pitchers, becoming a prisoner of its own making because we're so coddling these pitchers, if coddling's even a right word, or if we just let them play more freely, we'd see better pitching and less injuries. I wonder about that. I'm sure you've given that some thought.
Yeah, sure. Pitch counts are not the solution to the injury problem. Certainly they're going to help until they, realize that the operating system of the muscles is in the brain, and let's make sure we set the processes of the mind correctly so that reduces that tug of war. But until then, pitch counts are important, and I think there's so many pitchers, there's so many specialists in the game now in the bullpen that their job is to go out there and throw as hard as they can, for as long as they can, and they know it's probably not going to be more than 20 or 30 pitches, and they know they can handle that. But then all of a sudden, if these processes of the mind are not correct during those 20 or 30 pitches, there's wear and tear, there's weakening that's taking place in the muscles, the ligaments, and the tendons, and eventually these guys are breaking down, and that's what we see. So it's, there's nothing wrong. I love velocity and I love perfect mechanics, but again, it's a deadlier combination than ever before because these guys are bigger and stronger than ever before, and they don't quite understand the processes of mind. So, I'm trying to get people to listen, and they're listening to some degree, but, whatever, when the time is right.
Yeah, it's really something. Now, I understand at one point, the great George Brett, and for all the years that a fella, whom you had played with, George had, if I'm not mistaken, if I recall correctly, had marveled at a lot of the work you were doing, and I thought, my Lord, if I have that correctly, if George Brett is paying attention, why isn't baseball?
Yeah, there's so many layers of management in baseball, and just because George is a Hall of Famer and actually, a vice president with the Royals, there are just so many different levels, and people have their ideas and their ways to do things, which are great. That's important to have, and sometimes, I think it's important to know the direction you want to go in life, but it's also important not to put blinders on as you're traveling that direction. But George is very supportive. He's made introductions to me. I met with the Royals hitting coach. He's very interested. And, for whatever reason, things just aren't happening. What in life happens on your time frame, right? But it's all happening. Yeah, everything's happening as it's supposed to happen, and it takes a lot of patience and persistence when you're bringing something new to any area of life, and so we remain patient and persistent, and we're having a lot of success as we're doing so.
It's really something, and I guess in my waning moments, or in our waning moments, my last question is someone picking up your book who maybe hasn't played a competitive sport in decades, but is involved in being a teacher or a lawyer, an architect, an engineer, a contractor or a builder, more or less kind of everyday occupations. Can they benefit as well by the training which you and Mr. Yellen are teaching? I mean, can I benefit in what I do? Can others who aren't necessarily, who may like sports but aren't really participating at this point benefit?
Yeah, it was not our intention to bring this into the business world and other other areas of life, but what we're seeing, and quite often, we may be working with a golfer on a golf course, and he turns to us and he says, this is applicable to all of life, and we say, yes, it is, and it's just aligning with certain processes of mind so that you're better able to manifest whatever it is you want. And our specialty is just working in sports, but yes, I teach a lot of mind-body principles and techniques and modalities that allow someone to live, more of a life that they really want, that we all want. We want fulfillment in every area of our life, prosperity in all areas, and it's an inside job versus an outside job, and it's so easy to get so focused, on the outer world to try and create what it is we want. But as Roger Federer says, and we quote him in our book, he said, the game is within. And anytime, this is a very extreme comment he makes, he says, anytime you think the game is between you and your opponent, you're beat. Well, that's a very, very strong statement, but we understand that. What he's saying is all about the inner game that controls the outer game. And again, when we're working with a golfer or an athlete, and they turn to us and say, this is the law of life, they realize that it's that inner experience that allows you to manifest what you want in the outer world.
And it's really something, and talking with Mark before we began this morning, we've done a lot of baseball here on this show before your appearance, and the thing is that baseball always seems to be, even though there's been a lot of evolution in baseball recently, it was always slow to evolve to a lot of different things. And I agree with you, it's just going to take a little bit more time, but one success story at the big league level, I really believe you guys will start you'll start being heard from, because it doesn't really seem in today's baseball game that there's a lot of answers going around, but there's certainly a lot of questions about a lot of things, especially involving player mental and physical health. The book, The 7 Secrets of World-Class Athletes, our guest, Buddy Biancalana, the 1985 World Series MVP, and now a terrific coach, and is always kind to come on. Buddy, we wish you the best. Continue to send us materials and interviews, and we're going to keep circulating that, and we'll keep talking as we go. And we thank you so much for giving us this time today.
Great, Tony. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure.
You.
And you too. Buddy Biancalana. And we'll be coming back with our closing remarks and reminders, and so pleased to have you. And what'll be happening for our next show, so we'll see you right here in just a moment. May 13th, 2014, Tony DeAngelo, right back after this.